Welcome everyone to the Geospatial Connections Club on Clubhouse. I am really excited that you are all here and that we have an opportunity to chat about things geospatial and to build connections amongst everyone. So just to put it out there, this is being recorded. And so we tried that last time, it failed. I think we've got it figured out this time so that we can share these with people who aren't able to attend live, but that we can share the knowledge. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there and give you the opportunity to leave or just know that it is being recorded. Yeah, anyway, I'm Juliana McMillan-Wilhoit. I call myself a cartographer of change for both people and organizations. I work as a geospatial career coach, working one-on-one with people, doing things like working on portfolios and career prep, and then I also do community mapping work. I'm done speaking.
Oh. I'm Bonnie, and I'm about to start speaking. I'm a geospatial analyst, public speaker, and after this week, I'm a train the trainer in data geospatial techniques person. I just did a really interesting project that was a lot of fun, and I'm writing a book which kind of explains why I tend to get granular at times because I'm like relearning stuff that I knew that, now when you try to apply it or tell a story, you're amazed all over again about, the power of geospatial and location intelligence. I'm Bonnie and I'm done talking.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Okay. Can you hear me okay, Tim, Bonnie, Juliana? My earbuds give me fits.
It's getting better. You were kind of light there a second ago.
Okay, let's try this and see if this will work. So I'm Bruce Buxton. I am glad to be here, and thank you, Juliana, for all the good stuff you've been doing to, get things organized and record and all that. Thanks. I'm a business development director at a firm called Critigen. We're a geospatial consultancy. We do integration, implementation, innovative work of all kinds. And my part of this team is I'm the ROI guy. I like to talk about the value proposition of geospatial data analytics, and so that's kind of where my sweet spot is. And if you start talking about JSON and other such technical stuff, I will refer you to Bonnie or Juliana. This is Bruce, and I'm done speaking.
Bruce, you come in and out. I don't know if it's me, but I can't hear you as boldly and beautifully as I usually do.
Yeah, it's like the spirit of Bruce.
The evil twin sitting on his left
Yeah,
shoulder.
maybe we can have a seance.
This is. Can you hear me any better?
That's way better.
Yeah.
That's good. Go. So I'm Bruce, and I'm done speaking. Tim, you're up.
Yeah, I'm a longtime Govey. What I want to share is something exciting for me. Is I just finished, or I'm in the process of finishing a class called Visual Management, and it's about creating humane systems for professionals to thrive in. And I think we can apply it to GIS for sure, but just about anything where anything where people work together. So I hope one of these days we'll have maybe we can even dedicate a clubhouse talk to it. But I'm just excited that I'm on the final stage. I'm on the home stretch. So it's been a very tough but rewarding class. It's a long time since I've been in a class, so it's been great. So I'm done talking now.
Well, thanks everyone. It is great to get to know all of you. And so we didn't meet last week because it was the Esri user conference, and sort of leading up to that, we talked a little bit about like how to make the most out of a conference. And just one thing I just wanted to throw out both to the moderators as well as other people is in part like, how was your Esri user conference experience? And or are you attending any other GIS conferences and you're sort of thinking about applying, some networking or other things? I will just say that I was really disappointed with the networking platform and sort of opportunities at the user conference. I'm going to the Society for Conservation GIS conference. I'm actually presenting at that And I'm just blown away with how good their platform is for networking. And so using keywords to find people. And that was something I was just really super disappointed with last week at the user conference. Because that was something I was really hoping to get, was to connect with people.
Now, as usual, with everybody else on the panel, um, I had a different experience, to tell you the truth. And I am like connection light. I like to meet with people and I like to talk to people, but I like pointed discussions around specifics. I don't like just, getting inundated. In a collaborative, in a networking environment, I guess I should say. But I was able to figure out, on the Esri platform, and if anyone doesn't know what Esri is and wants us to like roll back and even explain what geospatial is or why Esri matters, you can flash your face and we can kind of make sure that we level set everybody in the room. But they had a chat function on the special, what do they call them, the special groups. I got a lot of people reaching out over on LinkedIn, and I kind of value those more than the ones that can get you within a platform, because it takes intention and it takes thought and it takes, you have to come up with a question and something to seed a conversation beyond, like, hey, I want to meet you. So my experience was totally different. I got a lot out of what I was looking to get out of it specifically, which may be a narrower focus. But I'm Bonnie and I'm done talking.
No, I do think you bring up a good point, and I wasn't able to attend many of the special entrance group meetings sort of live as I wanted to, which is where there was more of that interaction. But even like with Clubhouse, right? There's a value, and now there's even like a messaging and chat function. But just in terms of being able, like going that next step and reaching out to somebody on another platform, like as I think about the ways that my networking and relationships have grown, people who like put that initial effort in, I'm more likely to build a relationship because it's clear that we really want to build.
So, can I ask a question from both of you? Like, I had the same experience that Juliana had. We have a hard time in these virtual conferences, and this was just like even worse than before. We have a hard time having real conversations in real time with people. So we have this, for us, and Bonnie, I don't think this is your experience, but for us at Critigen, we have a booth that we pay a decent amount of money to be able to have a virtual booth, and where we can present information and where we can have conversations and where we can kind of help people, get their own questions answered in real time. And that just doesn't happen. It didn't happen the way that the Connect part of this conference was set up. And even in the back end, like after the fact, with people who said they want to talk to us, so they'd like to hear more from us, it's still very difficult to come up with contact information. It's very difficult to come up with ways to follow up. And I know I'm on the sales part of it, but it's a big part of what we try and do is, educate people on what the solution is. We're not trying to beat people up and sell them something and close them, but we want to educate. And it's really difficult to educate people on that platform in real time. So my experience is a lot more like Juliana's. So I'd be interested, Bonnie, like from your point of view, did you present a lot and then you had people following up on your presentations? How did you present yourself as a potential person to connect with? Or did people just look and say, this is a very interesting person. I'll look at their LinkedIn
Yeah,
profile.
that.
Well,
No, I'm kidding.
And that
somehow I knew you'd
and
say
that was
that.
happening like in the comments, like in the special entrance groups, which were happening live, right?
Yeah, I mean that was more there, like where you could. Well, I always make comments too, and I like to keep people on task. And I'm very focused in ArcGIS, the Python API. That's kind of my wheelhouse, my thing. So I was laser focused and had a lot more to contribute there. And on the racial and diversity stuff, it's really hard for me to not speak up when there's representation in the conference, but throughout corporations, it doesn't match, who they're putting up in front of you to speak to you. So, yeah, yes, I get it. And I really appreciate, Bruce, your perspective, because I wasn't thinking of it from a corporate view and, having to pay that money. and not get out of it, particularly what you wanted. Did I don't know if we want to open it up and see if anyone else had different experiences throughout the conference
Well, let
or
me, can I follow up your comment by saying, it's a significant layout of resources for a company like Critigen. And it always has been, frankly, when we had in-person conferences, it's always a big layout, and it just feels, and I don't care if anybody from Esri's here and they can hear me, but it just feels like you get ripped off because you're kind of, it's like a gun to your head. You kind of have to show up. Your name has to be on that screen somewhere if you're going to be a good Esri partner. And then, the people we talk to and our experiences is that the tools are there to keep people who are at the conference completely anonymous, and most people stay anonymous. And I understand why that's the case. I get it, but it doesn't help us. Like, if it's going to be a conference where you want people to attend and not be able to be interacted with, then don't extract the kind of money that they extract from us to be there. That
yeah,
feels like you get taken advantage of.
they
So
should have
I
made the default that you're revealed, and then you have to intentionally anonymize yourself, because I thought when I first got in there that was just what they wanted. They didn't want us to, for whatever reason. And then when I was like, oh, I could just put my name in here, okay, I didn't even know, and I didn't pay attention, Bruce, that they were like booths to go visit, or people you could go visit outside of the sessions, because like Juliana, I was so busy trying to get to my high value sessions, amongst my busy workday, that I wasn't really paying attention to what else was on offer.
And
So
and that's so funny, Bonnie, because that is exactly like when you think of a real in-person conference. Everybody does that same thing. They're running from session to session, but once in a while they're going to make it to the exhibit floor, right? They're going to get there because there's some tchotchkes there, there's some people they want to see, and blah blah blah. But it is, it's very similar to that. You have to intentionally go there, and it's just so much easier to go to your sessions virtually and then not go looking through the booth listings to see who's there
well
and go have a conversation.
I'll say, as someone who really likes going and visiting with vendors just to understand the future of the technology, though it was hard, at least for the vendors that I looked at, because I actually thought, Bruce, about like setting up a meeting with you, and then I was like, oh, like I don't want to take up his precious time, is just that I had to actually set up a meeting and I couldn't just like drop in, which is sort of like the value ish of Clubhouse, right? Where a lot of you may be doing something else right now, and but that there's like a conversation you can drop in. You can maybe speak, you can maybe not, but like that was something that was sort of missing with that just ability to do like a drive by of just like drive by Critigen, be there for
Yeah.
30 seconds, be like, peace out, I'm not interested, or like you showed me something really cool.
Like last year, that's what was missing this year, because last year there was a drop-in function. And Katie, who's on the call, Katie, for example, this is something that happened last year. I had Gavin from Marin Water, and then Katie Schroyer showed up at the same time in the booth. And there were 6 of us on the chat, including Katie and Gavin. And we had a really nice talk about, utility network for small utilities or for municipal utilities. And it was just kind of an off-the-cuff conversation we were having it. And that feature just wasn't available. And like, I saw that you had put your name in to have a conversation with me, but try as I might, I couldn't connect with you. So that was really bizarre.
and you connected with me, but I didn't know what it meant. Like, I
Right,
saw these red dots, and there was like 6 people waiting to talk to me. I didn't
right,
know that that's what that was.
right, exactly. So from our point of view, that just was a real fail.
But I guess so that's a bit of a retrospective on the Esri conference. But I guess in terms of moving forward, I'd love to know if other people have lessons in terms of how they may approach networking online differently, or how they might approach another conference differently. So for me, a big thing was recognizing how much more active I had to be on social media at the same time. So like I put together a post that got pretty good traction on LinkedIn. That was just sort of like, if you want to connect with people, comment here, and hopefully, and then tag people who might be worth who could maybe help, which felt slightly invasive, but also felt like I needed to create some space. So be curious though if anyone in the audience wants to flash their mic and come up, and sort of and add anything to this conversation.
I would love actually to hear the reaction to what I was saying and what Bonnie was saying and Juliana was saying from a point of view of someone who's a practitioner, who does it all the time, who comes to the conference because they want to educate themselves. And like, how did you see it? Am I completely off base or what? So I'd love that. Anybody willing, just raise your hand and we'll bring you up.
Well, hopefully we won't have to deal with this anymore, right? So we'll just meet in person next year, and
The
all this
Delta
will be
variant is
forgotten.
real, Tim. The Delta variant is
We're
real.
on
Well,
Lambda
vax
now,
up.
people. We're on Lambda. But here's all right, here's something, that I think is, maybe relevant, to the conversation too, since everyone seems to be shy. Uh, we could pick up on, I think, I don't want to call anyone out, Katie, but I feel like there was something posted on LinkedIn, and if I have it wrong, correct me, but I think that the what was it, the imposter syndrome, after Esri sort of a thing. And I always, this keeps popping up a lot, and I don't know why. So I find that interesting, and most of the people that contacted me, at least a dozen, were kind of new and overwhelmed by some of the topics. Like, oh my God, how do you set up this API? And what were they talking about? And I missed it. And, there was a lot of panic. I rarely, maybe with the exception of maybe a handful of people, were like at their same career point that I was and kind of just wanted to like brainstorm a problem. So I'm very curious about Katie's comment on the imposter syndrome. I'm done
Hey,
talking.
hey guys, can you hear me okay?
That we can.
Hopefully. Okay, good. Um, I don't have the best single, so hopefully I don't cut out too much. Um, but the imposter syndrome was a lot of that came from past experiences that I've had at the UC where you just feel really intimidated by people that are truly like experts in their field and are focusing on one thing when I'm in the office focusing on a gazillion different things and trying to get problem solved for my position. And just being new in GIS, and there's so many different like fields and studies and things that you can do, and you sometimes feel like you're just not doing enough. And I've heard that from a few other people that I've worked with through social media and stuff, that it can be extremely overwhelming when you're new because you feel like you have to learn everything and you have to know it all right now. And so it's kind of that, like, even if I do well in my job, even if I have a good job, I really don't know anything and I don't know how to do anything. And that feeling is very real for a lot of people. So that's kind of where that came from. And I think with the UC, it just kind of comes up for a lot of people because you're exposed to so much more of the software that you maybe haven't been using before, or just seeing what everybody else is doing. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're working on such great projects and I'm doing nothing. I'm still doing the same stuff I was doing last year. I'm missing out.
So
Yeah, and
does that keep you from commenting? Does that keep you from kind of stepping up and saying, "Hey, I'd like to know more," or asking a question?
Oh, I certainly think it does in different rooms. And I am one of those people where like I like to get the chat going really well when I'm in a presentation. um, and I agree with you guys that the SIGs were really nice for that. And I did connect more people in those SIGs than I did anywhere else in the conference. And as far as like the booths portion, I think it's hard to reach out to vendors anyways when you don't really have a straight up question, but you just want to talk to somebody. And it's always a little intimidating that way. But this year I found it nearly impossible. Like I was legit trying to get a meeting with some people from a group for work for like a potential project I want to work on with them. And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. It was like going to an empty booth. It was very, very frustrating. Um, so I feel you there, Bruce, with like I don't feel like it was as nice as it was last year where you could just kind of drop in at a certain time frame and just kind of join a spontaneous conversation like you would at a booth.
It was just probably as close as you could get to actually walking to a booth and just joining a conversation, but that just didn't exist. But
Well, I think the intent. I mean, like a conference this big, I think they just throw a lot of content out there, and you're sort of on your own. I mean, I don't. I don't think. I mean, I don't think they spend a lot of time, or a lot of these big conferences like this spend a lot of time on connectivity because it's just hard to do. I think that if you want to have a conference where you're connecting with folks, you make that the initial intent when you get started. I mean, I know Toby was in the audience earlier. We put on a leadership summit about this time last summer, and we got great feedback because it was one session that everyone listened to and everybody could comment on. It wasn't like 1,000 different sessions and everyone's going off in different directions. So I think the smaller the conference, the more interaction it provides virtually. This will all change if we ever get back in person, but for now, I think that I this year I didn't even expect to connect with anybody because I knew it would be so burdensome.
And, I just really quickly, before we move on to our people that have things to share, and I also have a very different perspective because I'm an autodidact. So I know I know there's a lot I don't know. I taught myself Python from the ground up. I taught myself QGIS and ArcGIS and Arc mapping, all of that I had to learn myself. So I don't think of it, as necessarily imposter. I think about it as like, well, I'm looking at shiny objects. And if it's something that I think has a role in the work that I do in social policy and things like that, then I just bring the tool on board. So I'm a subject matter expert in one field and looking for tools to help tell my story and teach my classes and write my book. So my whole thing is a bit different. I only wanted to share that in case there's any other people that in the audience that are teaching themselves these skills that, I see you. I'm Bonnie and I'm done talking.
So this is Juliana, and I just want to give a little bit of additional context what we were talking about with Katie's thing. So Katie runs a great YouTube channel called Project Spatial, and so there's now like a back channel message feature. So I'm sure that if you click on Katie's face, and then next to that there's like a paper airplane, you could probably send her a message, and she could send you a link to that. Not to put you on the spot, Katie, but I just want to provide context in terms of what we were talking about in terms of what Katie had produced about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, more than happy to do that, Juliana. Feel free, anybody that wants to reach out to me. I can give you a link or whatnot, or you can find me on LinkedIn too. It's just Katie Scheuer, and you'd be able to see all the stuff that's going on over there. But yeah, and Bonnie, I think that's the point where like you are a very confident person and you're secure in who you are and that sort of stuff. And I think it's when you don't have that personal confidence to step in to a room of a whole bunch of people that are talking at potentially a much higher level than you, or like for me, like I was always very intimidated by people that code because I don't know code very well and I've self-taught, a fair amount and I can like make my way, but I'm not well versed in it. I don't have a computer science background. I have a geology background. So like that always kind of intimidated me. And then that if you let that get to you too much, you get to a point where you're starting to feel like you just don't know anything. And so it's something that I know a lot of people in the tech industry do, but just a lot of people in general. I have heard so many like entrepreneurs and everything talk about it. So that was part of the reason that I wanted to kind of bring it up, especially around the UC, because that was something that I certainly struggled with when I was younger.
Well, Melissa came on stage. I think we struggled a little bit with her a second ago. So, Melissa, what do you have to share?
Hi everyone, good morning from Winnipeg. I'm a frequent GIS clubber and have been waiting for a club room to open up with Geospatial Connections. So I'm really happy to be here. Long time Esri user. I was indoctrinated and drank the Kool-Aid back in my university days, and have been using it since, and then adopted, the other fun tools that are out there. Some of them, but not all of them. And I sat out the conference this year, so I came up because I just wanted to be a part of the discussion, and just hear a little bit more about your experiences. And what I'm hearing is kind of one of the reasons why I sat this one out and chose to consume some of the information post hoc. And just with the previous conference, and I think we're all kind of feeling this, is online conference fatigue. There's just so many that we've been through over the last, over a year. And these inputs that, we're at computers all day. Some of us are lucky enough to be able to walk away with a GPS once in a while. But yeah, I found the overwhelming sort of micro cosms that would occur in the conference quite overwhelming, and you'd have to take half the day to make decisions about where you were going to go. And this was a busy week for me this week, so I decided to sit it out. So I'm very just interested in some of the feedback, because I do look forward to when we can go back in person. And as someone who has put on conferences here in Manitoba, um, we do tend to like to have half the day or most of the day where everyone's in the room together. And we have the ability to do that, having a small GIS community here. So yeah, when we do go to those bigger conferences, we can feel like a little bit of a little fish, an eager little fish, in a big blue sea, of content and tools and capabilities and skill sets, and going into it with a humble sort of perspective, I think, is always something that I try and do to avoid imposter syndrome, which is sometimes unavoidable in any career. But I think it just reinforces that I think I'm happy that I sat this one out, and I'm going to digest everything in time over the next few weeks or so. But just happy to be here and chat, and yeah, just talk all things geospatial. Thanks.
So thanks so much, Melissa, for that perspective. So one question that I have for you and for everyone else is, right, it'll be at least a year until the next Esri UC. I know the GIS Pro is going to be in person this year, which is the EURISA conference. But this is sort of selfish, right? So sort of, how can the Geospatial Connections Club maybe help fill a gap in sort of need for some of your desires to connect and to network? But also, GIS Day is coming up in October, or November, sorry, and I'm in conversations about having sort of a half day online professional development networking thing. And I'm also curious, like, is that something that interests you? Is that what would good online networking look like to you?
Well,
I think
I can
Toby had
actually
it down.
go ahead. I was just going to
Uh,
speak to somebody from Esri who reached out to me, and I thought they did a great job networking with a problem that I was having. um and I'm, swear to God, I feel like now they're like stalking me, because every day it's like, is the code still running, did we fix it, did we do, so things that solve problems in real time are very helpful. But I like your idea, Juliana. I mean, I feel like with the expertise across the panel, I don't know if I'm the only grunt moderator that is like doing all this stuff, doing all, I'm the worker bee, or if there's others. But we could feature topics throughout the day that are things that interest us, and like just kind of hop in and out. So I think there's a seed of something exciting there that can be built.
I would just
Hey,
say,
Julie.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Bruce.
No, that's okay, Juliana. I was just, it would be an interesting idea to have to use Clubhouse as like a conference back channel that doesn't exist today, right? So something like that might be helpful. But I did want to add just one little thing to the discussion about these conferences. And the dirty little secret is that, and this is just my point of view. I know that there are people that disagree with this, but from my point of view as a vendor for the past 20 years in the GIS space, conferences haven't been working for us for a long time, right? They're just not effective. They're not helpful. We spend too much money doing stupid things. And
But
frankly,
I love
we,
the pens.
pardon?
I love the
Yeah,
pens.
we all love the tchotchkes. That's absolutely true. But it doesn't work in terms of our business development, and partially because we're so concerned about selling stuff instead of educating people. And so I think part of the answer for vendors like us is to stop selling at things like this and start educating, and to be more or less a place where people can stop and actually have a conversation to progress their careers rather than to, move them down the sales cycle for a product or service that I might offer. So, we're definitely part of the problem, but it hasn't been working for a long time. And so that's one of the reasons that this discussion just gets me cooking, is because this just really drives home the point that these very expensive business development conferences for us don't work that well. So I really love the small conferences, Melissa. Like when I go to a small, like state ERISA conference, or just any small organization conference, those are the ones that I really love, because I can talk to all 50 people in the room, and I can really develop some relationships that are good. I can help you, you can help me kind of relationships, rather than just kind of hands off. I know your name, I'm going to send you an email kind of relationship. So
Right.
I agree with you that the small conferences they're just a pleasure to go to and be involved in personally.
Yeah, and as someone who I was in charge of sponsorship for 2 years for our conference here in my province, and so I developed relationships with the vendors, and they want to be a part of the discussion, and they don't want to be the sleazy salesmen on the periphery of the sea of geospatial people, and they want to be a part and they want to be in the mix. But with a lot of conferences, there are rules. If you do provide a presentation and you are a vendor and sponsoring vendor, you cannot pitch. So and that's one of the rules that we have at our conference, and it's a way to promote them to think outside the box and join the sea of geospatial nerds and join in us in our contemplations in using GIS technologies. And it's a great way, and it works on a small scale though, right? So when you get really big, it's kind of harder to do that. But there's little implementations that can be done on small scale conferences. It just kind of enriches that experience of exchange and sharing and collaboration, and less of a sales and customer sort of orientation. I would just
Yeah.
finish up and say that if you want to use the Geospatial Connections Club as like a digester to the conference, I would say for those of you who attended, it'd be really helpful for someone like me who just couldn't put that on my plate, put it on my plate this year, to highlight 3 of the talks that were impactful and approachable for a wide variety of us that have multiple skill sets and areas that we work in, and then take that into our own digester and go deeper and have the conversations that we wanted to have, and even bring the vendors in to talk about the software and tools that complement some of those talks in a nice open Discord. That would be one of my ideas. But yeah, I'm Melissa. And
Hey, Melissa. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I think I'm really impressed, amazed, and thankful today in terms of how many people have joined our conversation. And I think there's a lot of food for thought in terms of, yeah, opening up back channels during conference, or just having more sort of topical discussions. But we are at the top of the half hour, and so I do just want to reset the room and welcome you all to the Geospatial Connections Club. This conversation is being recorded as a way for us to be able to share the conversation with people who are not able to make it live today. And I do also want to let you know that we do have a website. It's www.geospatialconnections.com. And there you can sign up for our mailing list. We sent out a few emails on that, but that's just a way for you to be able to stay connected with us, as well as you can get links to all of the different moderators there. So, yeah. But Toby, you had something that you were interested in saying, and everyone was talking up your conference.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Tim had mentioned that last year we did have a conference, and we really made a point that we wanted it to be very niche, to where it was just one subject per day, so that everybody knew exactly what they're going to be exposed to, and also the presenters that would be presenting on those particular topics. And we noticed that the more niche you get, the more it was more applicable to the people that were there, rather than being stretched very thin, covering multiple different topics. But and what Bruce was saying, I totally agree that the larger the conferences are, the more diluted it is to where it's harder to actually engage with prospective clients and just the attendees in general. And with the online portion of things, this whole landscape's changed because social media gives you so much more leverage than having a physical booth and just waiting for someone to walk by. And, going to the Esri conference and going into the expo hall, how many times we just like walk right by a booth just looking at their backdrop and you just kind of keep going and there's no engagement. But I think with a smaller conference, a more niche topic, and then bringing in vendors that actually complement the topics at hand, it's a win-win situation. And then with social media, you can kind of build up the exposure, which is really what the vendor is really looking for, is that exposure to the attendees and what they are able to solve or provide solutions or services. And so I think that's kind of like the lay of the land, the way things are moving in that direction. And this year we were looking to do another GIS Success um, conference, but um, kind of ran out of time to kind of do that with everything else going on. But one of the things we struggled with was like, okay, well, how do we deal with vendors? How do we deal with those that want to participate? And you know, next year we'll probably kind of reconvene and have another virtual conference. But I think what we're going to do is probably do a similar pattern where we have one day it's one particular topic, but maybe on a third day it's the vendor themselves talking about that topic and giving the attendees the opportunity to now engage, and they're there because they want to be there. They're not there because they have to sit through uh, the spiel. And so I think that right there will give a win-win situation to the situation that Bruce is talking about. So anyways, that's Toby, and I'm out. Thanks.
In fact, I was just listening to I don't know the conference. I should, because it looked like it was probably good. It was global. So Anita Grazier, if you're familiar with her, it was Undark, or I forget the name of her blog. But she was talking about urban, what do they call it? Urban GIS. And she was talking about, how niche it is. Because, you go to urban planning meetings and they're just amazed that you can like do a little cluster or a buffer. But then you turn around and try to take that niche topic into the GIS proper. And people are like, huh? What are you talking about? So, I think there's a lot to gain, from kind of blending those two, like maybe providing a couple of different buckets and then having conversations in the buckets, because I was looking at everything at the Esri conference just trying to figure out what might be of interest to me, and I had a lot of things scheduled that were at the same time. And then it just hit me, when I discovered the conversations. And this is more to Melissa's point of just sharing something that I personally got out of the conference. If anyone else wants to highlight a topic or a presentation, was the ArcGIS Python API, because I had never realized, this also speaks to Katie and me feeling like everyone knows this but me, and it still may be the case, but I got it now, was that I do not like Windows. I'm famous for not doing anything if I have to go on a Windows computer. You're never going to convince me otherwise, right or wrong. So I don't even use my ArcGIS Pro. I just look at the activity or the request, and I reproduce it over in QGIS. So, but I learned that I can run ArcGIS in my terminal with the Python API and access all of that stuff, without having to pop open a Windows computer. So, how fantastic is that? I'm Bonnie and I'm done talking.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious too. Is how did we consume the conference, or how do we do as a group? Mayra just came up, so we'll talk to her in a second. The do you take time off? Do you just kind of glance at these sessions as they are in the background, and you've divided your time, or do you actually go, I am at the conference right now for the next 3 hours and I'm going to be watching sessions. Just kind of curious the group.
Well,
And Mayra, if you'd like to chime in there, go ahead.
can I just follow up and then we'll get Myra, but can I just follow up on that what you said, Tim? Because I think one of the advantages that I said when we started this online conference deal is, the people who don't really have the seniority in an organization to get travel funds to travel will now be able to attend these conferences for free pretty much. And so I think we have a lot of entry level folks attending and watching and looking. And I wonder also, when I think about that, how does that affect the organization as a whole? Like, if you don't have your leaders attending a conference like this in real time, but you have a lot of your, say, entry level folks attending, how does that, what does that look like in reality? Does that benefit the organization? Is it just kind of a net neutral, or where is it exactly? So that's another question I've thought about a lot, is that how that affects these different larger organizations, like a county or a state, or a large utility or anything like that. But, like, I'm sorry I interrupted because I know we were going to Myron.
Oh no, I actually like where you were going with this, Bruce. If you want to continue talking.
No, I don't remember. I think, Myra, I think you work for yourself, or do you have a side hustle and then you work for another company? But I'd love your perspective. If you have a perspective on what I was just saying, I'd love to hear it. But you probably also have a comment or a question.
I mean, what you said, I didn't know I was gonna have a response until I realized. But yeah, I do. I mean, I think that leadership, I guess, not having the, I guess, right leadership in our own companies is one of the things that aren't helping our company succeed and thrive. Because really, what is the point of being able to go to these leadership conferences if those people in charge who have the power to make changes and make spaces for those, I guess, unleashing and helping, uplifting your employees, because that is what you do as a leader. If they're not there, what's the point? Like, why are you trying to make other employees, go to these things when things aren't really being implemented? It can't just be the top, the bottom shop workers doing this. It has to. Anyways, but yeah, I think that that's an issue. So that's what I'm gonna say. I think that that's, we shouldn't do things like, I think leaders should go to these conferences as well. They should be the ones like leading the changes.
Yeah, but and it's true, Myra. But given an opportunity, if you have a leader sitting behind his desk, and he's not really, he doesn't have to pay, he or she, excuse me, they don't really have to pay attention, because nobody's watching them and nobody's saying, oh, that guy's on his phone the whole time or whatever. So they can just multitask, right? They can do their emails, they can do this, they get maybe some of the conference, but not all the conference, but nothing like it was when they had to sit in a chair and pick which conferences they're going to. I'm sorry, I've got somebody working on the house, so I'm going to go on mute for the rest of the time because this is probably very annoying.
Well, that's what was kind of missing this year. I mean, the one thing I searched for were leadership, and Adam Carnell always does the GMOS, the Open Leadership or the Open Summit, Managers Open Summit, and they didn't seem to have a lot of leadership stuff here. But Myra and Bruce, just to kind of follow up, that's what's nice about this particular conference, especially now that it's opened up to anyone in your agency that can attend. Is, yeah, I mean, for the developers, they can join developer stuff. For those that are just getting started or newbies, they can learn how, what's new in this new product. So I think that's cool. I mean, I don't think you have to have a manager there. And the way I like it here, I'm a manager. I prefer staff, my coworkers going to these conferences more than me, because I think my agency will benefit more by actually having the doers go and learn how to do.
Yeah, I think that is it is really great that there's sort of a more equity in terms of lower level people being able to go, be inspired, and be exposed within these conferences. So things, I guess, going back to sort of the original thing in terms of like something that I took away. So I am on a personal journey to become a better communicator. So both in terms of being better in my verbal communication through doing things like this on Clubhouse, but also become a better visual communicator. And so I always love the session on map wizardry that John Nelson, Edie Punt, and Ken, blanking on his last name, did. It was, I came away really inspired. Ended up going camping last weekend and collected some data using my phone to make some cool maps inspired by what they did. And I just love their passion for how can we communicate this data better.
Juliana, have you seen Esri has a cartography MOOC, and they are hysterical. They host the whole thing. Both
Yes,
of them.
I'm familiar with it. I've sort of like started it, and then I deprioritize. I intentionally deprioritized doing it, just because some other more important things happened. But yeah, I'm aware of them, and
No,
I
I
just
just
think that
thought
they're fantastic humans.
you would
Yeah.
enjoy their banter and their. I was just doing it to see. I do a lot of teaching and a lot of workshopping, so I like to see examples of where it works and where it doesn't. So I was watching, and Esri's got beautiful like training and learning resources and all of that. So I just wanted to make sure it didn't escape you, that you knew it was out there if you wanted to have a little hit of their magic. I'm Bonnie, and I'm done talking.
Yeah, so the unfortunate thing is that you can only do the MOOC during the times that they do it, so I can't like go get it now. Um, but anyway, uh,
Hey, so Julianne, I don't know what you had planned, what you were thinking, but maybe we could engage those who are in the audience who have, who did attend, who might have learned something or just came out of it just thinking, wow, that was cool. Because so far I've just been nothing but critical. But I'm hoping that maybe there was someone in the audience that really saw something that was really good for them or really helped to move their career or anything like that. I'd love to hear from anybody like that.
Besides the ArcGIS Python API, which was stellar.
Okay, Bonnie, one for Bonnie, the ArcGIS Python API.
But
Good.
I do want to say while we wait for someone else to come back up, I don't think it was as technical as it has been in the past, or I just got a lot smarter. I don't know. It would have been nice to have some more technical sessions.
Bonnie, I think you need to start attending the developer conference for that.
Yeah, I
I've
actually
noticed
have a
that trend
developer
too.
account. I didn't realize that my account is a develop. Well, I have two accounts. One's developer and one's like, the little personal 100 thing. But I agree with you. Thanks for pointing that out.
I
Do you
have
know when
a
it is, Katie? Do you know when it's being held?
I think this year has already passed. I think they usually do it in the spring, if I
it's
remember
in
right.
it's in March, so it was like it. If you just sort of in terms of timeline, it was the conference was sort of canceled last year in 2020, but not quite. It was like the last thing that happened, so it was sort of there, but sort of not because a bunch of people canceled because coronavirus was maybe a thing. So it's like the second week of March or first week of March.
Yeah, we send a couple of our devs to the Dev Summit, and again, back when things were normal, the Dev Summit also exists inside the big UC. You just have to find it. So our devs, at least one of them, would prefer to go to the bigger UC, still attend some of the dev stuff, but also some of the other things instead of just all dev all the time. So I guess it depends on your taste.
Hey, this is Jordan. Um, so I went to the Dev Summit this year, paid money, and it was great. It was totally awesome. Really enjoyed all the full in-depth presentations. I was I probably, unlike most of y'all, I've never been to a UC in person, right? For me, it was always a budget thing of like, oh, hey, you can spend $1,700 to get to California, or you can go to like 4 state conferences, right? So I'll take 4 state conferences any day, or I guess any year. So I was really excited these past 2 years to have the virtual experience. I really thought last year's UC was better than this year's UC. And I guess some of my beef with it was there were just a lot there are really a lot of intro sessions, and I think that I'm kind of beyond that at my point. You know, it'd be nice to have more of a choose your own adventure of these are intermediates or these are expert level sessions. Um, but even if that wasn't a thing, I think the biggest turnoff for me outside of the platform was just kind of the maybe the lack of preparation from Esri staff. And I love them. I love them, but they know this is coming every single year. And you've got some people that knock it out of the park every time, like your John Nelsons or your Hussein Nassers. Um, but I mean, presentation and storytelling, all that is a big deal, and we can't present it dryly. And I find myself, I'm still going through a lot of the videos on the UC site, and I find myself having to rewind over and over and really focus in on stuff. And I don't think it's just because I'm getting older. I think that it's these presentations are not as well done as they otherwise could be. I'm Jordan, and that's about it.
Yeah, Jordan, I'm sorry if I hope the sounds aren't too loud here, but that jogged a thought that I had during the conference, and that is that it might have been just the way I saw things, but it didn't feel to me like that there were a lot of user presentations, like the user and the vendor together presenting. It felt like that there was just an abundance of Esri-led presentations and not near enough user presentations. And I felt like the quality of the presentations reflected that, honestly.
Yeah,
Can
I
I
think
once
that the
again
user stories are really compelling, and without that, it's dry.
Yeah, and there weren't very many user stories. That's a fact.
and sometimes usually what I find is the sponsor stories are more professional and the user ones I avoid like the plague because I don't want to be sold something when I've already bought a big piece of software and traveled to be somewhere. Um, that just makes me a naysayer, Bruce. I didn't I didn't mean it personally, but so I usually when I was selecting my schedule, I was leaning towards the Esri because I thought, well, of course, these are going to be the most polished and the best. And I agree with everyone's comments so far that it wasn't always the case.
Maybe it's me. I just appreciate a little humanity. I don't like the recorded sessions. I want to see people screw up, and I want to see, I like that there's,
Amen.
I want a live presentation, even if it's online. It just feels like you're closer to the presenter that way.
I don't know why they did that either. I mean, I'm sure there's a business reason because the one good part of it, if I could pull out a graticule of something good, was the fact that the moderator, well, the presenters could be there live and be commenting in real time. That was helpful, but the quality of the recording wasn't there and I didn't understand it. And then they'd all say, "Hey, we're going to do this Q&A live," and they'd all disappear to some room. I didn't know where they were going. So yeah, it was very confusing for me. Anyway, I'm done talking.
I have a question for you guys, if I may.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to change the conversation, but I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm curious to think what y'all's thoughts are. So maybe you guys already thought about this, or you already see this happening around you. How do we get earlier education GIS tools for people who are younger to be able to experiment with GIS? I think I hear a lot of talks all the time in different types of industries, education, manufacturing, I guess, just technology. And you hear about the skills, sometimes the job shortage, but also sometimes the skills gap. And I think that GIS is the solution to one of the many, I guess, solutions to some of our problems. And I'm curious to know if anybody or if any schools around you are integrating GIS in their schools. And if not, I'm curious, can we start this? Because I truly believe that, like, why can't you bring GIS? GIS brings real life problems, to you. And yeah, so that's my question. If it,
Uh, you're a mind reader. So so there is, at least in the US, I mean, it is a global program. I can't actually remember what it's called, but there is like an Esri program to get with the Geo Mentor program to get GIS professionals paired with local schools. And so that's something where some school districts in the US do that. I know there's an example of a school district in Northern Ireland that has used that program as well. So I am, yeah, so what you're talking about though is something that I am particularly interested in. So last year I ran a program called the Chicago Cultural Atlas, where I worked with students, mostly college students, or they were all college and grad students, to create a cultural atlas of Chicago. And I'm actually in the very beginning stages of looking at what would it mean to create a curriculum to do community mapping for high school students. So that's something that I'm beginning to think about. And Frank Romo, who is also, I don't think he's still here, but
I
Frank
was
also,
just gonna, he just left. I was just bugging him. I was saying, Frank, you need to be here.
yeah, so Frank ran a 2-day summer camp for high school students on how to use GIS.
Oh yes, I did comment on that. I was like, as soon as I saw it, I advertised it with all of my social networks because I'm like, this is amazing. Frank is amazing. I'm so glad he did that.
Yeah.
And I know I brought it to the Y. The YMCA had this. It wasn't a. They had these kids that would meet in the Y once a week, and they were, kind of high school level. And so I did get to teach just one session, and then, COVID happened, and then the director of that Y took a different position, and I just don't have the time to advocate, find the boots on the ground. I mean, if people identify me and say, would you? Yes, I do things like that, but I don't have the time or staff to kind of bring something to fruition. But I think it's really important. And when I go out in the community and I speak, I always use QGIS. Just because it's open source, and I don't want there to be any barriers to access. Because even if what I found out during the conference, just some people that I met, is they were gobsmacked. What you could end up being on the hook for through Esri. And I know everyone needs to make money, but if you're not part of an enterprise or part of a business, the credits can be like debilitating. So I start everyone on something that they can use and they can take home with them, and there's not going to be a barrier to access. So we might want to think about open source being a very high level, but Esri will donate. They've donated licenses, and it's not for a personal access to Esri. It is the best 100 bucks you can ever spend to learn the craft. I will say that, bar none. I'm Bonnie, and I'm done talking.
Well, we are just at the top of the hour now, so I want to thank everyone for coming and being part of our conversation today. It is super encouraging just to see everyone turn out, and we meet, at least right now, we are meeting on Wednesdays at this time, noon Central, 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific, Wednesdays in this Clubhouse room. We would love it if you went over to our email list, if you connected with us, moderators on social media. But again, the goal here is to forge conversations. So also feel free to back channel other people and yeah, continue the conversations. But again, www.geospatialconnections.com. And thanks so much for coming, and let us know. Please give us feedback in terms of different things we can talk about. So yeah.
Uh,
Anyway.
I wanted to say something quickly, Juliana. I interrupted your train of thought earlier when you talked about Frank, and I sorry about that. My eyes lit up when you talked about Frank. I apologize. Hopefully, later in the future, I can hear more about your thoughts on.
Oh no, that's totally fine.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. That was a lot of fun today. Let's meet again, 1 o'clock next week. Let's do it.
All right. Sounds good, everyone.
See y'all later.
Invite a friend. Invite a friend. Invite a friend. See ya.
All right. Bye, everyone.